Welcome to the UA Division of Agriculture's preview of the fall ballot issues. My name is Kristen Higgins, and joining me today is Tom Riley, Director of the Public Policy Center, and Stacy McCullough, an instructor in the Community and Economic Development Unit. Arkansans go to the polls November 6th to elect their representatives, and in addition to seeing those names on the ballot, they will also see several proposed laws. Mr. Riley has been busy with the Public Policy Center staff putting together fact sheets on those proposed laws and giving voters a sense of how they'll be affected if they pass. Can you tell me, Tom, a little bit about the Public Policy Center and what its role is in all of this?
The Public Policy Center is a part of a unit of the University of Arkansas Division of Agriculture. It's got both a research and extension responsibility. It was organized about 8 years ago. Since that time, every ballot issue that is statewide we've done the research on the ballot, looked at who's for it, who's against it, tried to do as unbiased a look at the issues as we can. The idea behind that being that the education program, the outreach program that we have a responsibility for is to help the voter make the most educated decision they can. So we try to provide them with who's for it, who's against it, and what are their strongest arguments. We look at the economics, we look at the implications of the proposal, whether it's a constitutional amendment or a referred act, and what it's going to do. What effect will it have if it passes? What effect will it have if it fails? And then we try to provide that unbiased information through county agents and our extension service delivery system statewide.
So you're not telling people how to vote? No.
What we're attempting to do is to give them the basis for making the best vote decision possible. But that's their decision. We don't have a stake in, or if we do have a stake in, we try to tell you that up front if we have a bias or perceived potential bias. We try to be sure that we are making an unbiased representation of the facts that as we know them, and help the voter then be as informed about that decision as they can possibly be. Know who's for it, who's for the issue, who's against the issue, and what are their motivations, what are their strongest arguments for and against. And then the voter's choice is an educated choice. That's what we care about, is having the voter be the best educated possible in making that choice.
So how exactly does an issue make it to the ballot?
It can happen in a number of different ways. Each main session of the legislature, the legislature now meets every year. So every other year they have a general session. And during that general session they can refer up to 3 items to the ballot. They can be constitutional amendments, or they can be initiated acts. While they can refer 3, citizens can also, by petition, put things on the ballot. They can refer constitutional amendments, and they can refer initiated acts. In this instance, this year, we have potentially 3 issues that are being referred by citizens by petition.
And how many from the legislature?
We have 2 from the legislature this time, but the thing that the legislature has done most recently is submitted complicated issues. So issues that have a given title, but there may be 2 or 3 different things actually taking place within that given title.
So like a theme with...
Like a theme with several different components. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But the issues have tended to become more complicated with the limitations of only 3 in a given legislative session.
And we saw that in the last general election as well. They had multi-part initiatives that they put on the ballot, so it's not just this year.
So it's becoming a trend then.
And it really makes the choice much more complicated for the voter, because they have to really do their homework to understand what's being proposed in one of those complicated initiatives.
And then they might be in support of maybe one, but then there's a couple other issues that they might not know about.
Could be. Right. There might be strong support for one, or or even opposition to another component of a given issue. And so you have to kind of do a balancing act to figure out whether or not you support the whole act.
Well, tell me about the first issue that's been referred by the legislature. What's that one about? The
first issue that's proposed by the legislature this time is an initiative that would authorize a bond issue for highway development, primarily for four-lane highway system. It's a $1.3 billion general obligation bond fund highway program for the state. Bonds to be let in the state of Arkansas, by the state of Arkansas, have to have the approval of the citizens. The legislature can't just say, we want to let bonds. They have to propose the bond issue be put before a vote of the people. It also, I mean, there's $1.3 billion in bond authority over about a 10-year period of time. There is also when you let bonds, you have to pay for them. And
right.
so
how would they pay for it at this time?
They're using this same issue as a mechanism for paying for the bond. So in this proposal is a 1/2 cent sales tax that is specifically designated to pay for the bond debt. And it would have a life that would track the bond life. So about a 10-year life for the 1/2 cent sales tax. And the 1/2 cent sales tax would be on all items that are taxed by sales tax today in our normal course of business, except that it would not be applied to the grocery tax. It would have the same limitations as the grocery tax would stay the same. It also permanently dedicates 1 cent per gallon from the proceeds of an existing motor fuel tax and distillate fuel taxes for the state into a state aid street fund. And that would be specifically to help communities, to have money set aside to help communities deal with street repairs and street construction. 70% of the bond proceeds would go to the state highway department for 4-lane highways. And then 30% of that revenue, something close to $670 million over the 10-year period of life of the bonds, would go to the street aid fund for municipalities and the street aid fund for counties. So that I guess that's the argument for the broader statewide utility or value of the bond program, is that distribution formula 70-30 to both the state highway 4-lane system and then county and local street funds.
Well, let me back you up there. As far as the new sales tax, can you tell me, would that have an effect on gasoline as well?
No, the gas tax is a separate tax. The sales tax would be only on those the merchandise that is taxed by sales tax.
So going out to eat or buying clothes.
Right.
Okay.
Any bit of commerce that has a normal sales tax on it today, except that of the grocery tax. It would not affect the grocery tax.
Okay. So if passed, this would increase the state sales tax rate from 6% to 6.5%.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
So what are supporters saying about this?
The business of roads is an expensive business. And so you have a choice of pay as you go, pay as you have funds available to build and repair roads, or you can essentially borrow money to do a significant number of things now, and then pay for them as funds are available, as you raise the money to pay off the debt. This the folks that are advocating for a bond issue are essentially saying this is an extraordinary time to borrow money. Money is, the interest on debt is low, probably as low as in our history. And so the opportunity to borrow money to invest in infrastructure today is as good a deal as we're going to get. By doing that, they see a strong emphasis in new jobs, new investment in infrastructure, bills for the long term, and so the state's advantaged by that.
Where would people be able to find out if their road work or their highway would be improved?
In our fact sheet and in information that we've posted on the web and with the highway department as well, there are maps of the proposed developments, which roads, which locations, both the length and the amount and the investment amount is all posted online and available for citizens that want to find that out.
So on the other side, what are opponents saying about this?
If you look around the country, there are a number of circumstances where government has overextended itself with debt. If you look at some of the developments out west, and so there's this apprehension about states, any government, taking on more debt at a time when the economy is already stressed. And the fact that the state already has significant debt associated with other bond issues is one of the things that is raised as well. But there is no formal opposition to this as yet. The resistance that we've seen to it has come from individuals and from editorials and things that we've seen.
Yeah, I've seen in the newspapers some people have said that they might not benefit from the road construction in their specific area,
right,
or receive enough money to do major repairs to their streets. And then there have been some people who have said that they think Arkansas roads are fine and they don't need any additional investment. Have you been seeing that as well?
I've seen that as well.
Well, Stacy, I guess you're working on the second issue. You've been reviewing the fact sheets and giving suggestions on how the fact sheet should be worded. Can you tell me about the second issue from the legislature?
Sure. This is also a proposed constitutional amendment, and it deals specifically with counties and municipalities. And there's basically three different parts of it. As Tom mentioned earlier, so these can be a little bit complicated. The first part allows for the creation of special districts that would be used for development or redevelopment purposes. And associated with that, it would create the authority to issue a new type of bond to Arkansas, and that's the Sales Tax Anticipation Revenue Bond, or a STAR bond. So those would be bonds that would be issued relative to those projects, and the funds that would be generated from those would help pay for the projects. The second authority that it creates is it would allow counties or municipalities to issue bonds to retire unfunded liabilities for their police and fire pension plans that they had closed previously. And related to that as well, they would have the authority to issue a sales tax to help pay for those bonds if that tax was approved by voters in a local election for that purpose.
So that would be a separate vote.
That would be a separate vote, not related to this vote on this broader authority. The third piece of that, of the proposed amendment, deals with Amendment 78, and it makes some changes. Particularly, it allows counties and municipalities to use special revenues to help pay for short-term debt obligations that they may have. Currently, they only are allowed to use general revenues, road revenues, or the waste revenue funds for those purposes. So this would allow that. It also eliminates some language that was stricken in a prior election, but the language was left in the amendment, and so it would get rid of that, and that deals with interest rate caps related to those debt obligations.
Okay, so just taking care of some old language there, removing some invalid language.
Yeah, we often see a lot of times something will get passed and it will change our Constitution or it will change a statute, but there's some other language in other parts that weren't addressed during that, and so this is just kind of taking care of that. It's an authority that no longer, or it's a regulation that no longer exists, and this is just getting rid of that extra language.
So tell me a little bit more about the first part, and you're right, this is pretty complex. The first part dealing with what STAR bonds and STAR districts, what exactly is a district?
All right, so a district would be something related to a specific project. And the project would be either the development or redevelopment of land or property within that area. It's typically going to be designated for areas that are considered blighted or are deteriorating, and so economically they're not feasible. People don't want to be there. There's no industry there, and so this would allow municipalities and counties to kind of set aside, these are districts we want to create. This is a special project to kind of clean this area up, and then to do that we're going to issue these bonds that is going to help pay for the redevelopment or the improvement of that piece of property. Those projects would have to be approved by an agency that would be designated by the General Assembly. We don't know what that agency is yet. That would be something that would be hashed out after the amendment is approved, if it is approved in the election.
So a city or county couldn't just pass a bond or issue a bond for a project without the approval then of that agency?
That's right. And they couldn't even create the district as far as I can tell.
Okay. And would that be a city project, or would that be like a public-private partnership?
Well, that's a great question. The authority is going to be through the municipality or county. But typically they're not going to create that unless they have some developers that are interested in developing that property. So in that sense, I think it's kind of a quasi thing. They know there's interest in doing something in this area, but those developers aren't willing to commit unless they know that there are steps being taken on the public side to make that a viable area.
And just moving on to the second part of it, the pension plan. What is a closed pension plan?
Sure. Back in the 1980s, the state established a pension plan that local governments could opt into to fund for the retirements of their police and firefighting forces. And so a lot of those municipalities or counties typically would have their own pension plan. And so at the time, if they decided they wanted to opt into the state one, they would close that plan. So no new hires that they brought in would be eligible for the old pension plan. Those in turn would be part of the new statewide plan. And so what happened is, you've got this group of employees that are now retiring out of those old plans, and so there's a need to refurbish. There's not any new revenue coming in from new members of those plans, and in a lot of cases the return on the investments in those plans has been less than expected with the downturn in the economy, certainly something that everyone's seeing. And so the situation is they've got a closed plan. They don't have enough money to pay out the benefits to the people that have retired from that system. These are employees that have served the communities in which they live and work, and they were promised this as their benefit once they've completed that service. And so this is just a way of allowing the area to fulfill that obligation.
So tell me, Stacy, what is the short-term debt?
That's basically, if they had some immediate purchases that they needed to be, not something so big that they would have issued bonds or had to finance something over a long period of time, maybe a police car, something smaller, it's basically debt they've accrued to help make those expenses or
so
pay
like a
for
bank
those
loan.
purchases. Sure. I mean, just as if you were going out to purchase a car, you wouldn't do a mortgage to purchase your car, but you might take out a shorter period of time instrument of debt, a loan for that car. So they do the same thing, and this would allow the county or the municipality to use additional resources that are within their capacity to help pay for that short-term obligation.
So what do supporters and opponents say?
The supporters of this proposed amendment say that it gives counties and cities additional tools and flexibilities just to do the things that they do as part of their everyday lives. It also, their philosophy is it's not affecting property taxes in any way, only sales taxes, and only in those instances where voters are approving that. And then also they're saying that without the ability to issue these star bonds for these blighted areas, we're at a competitive disadvantage to a lot of other states. So people that are looking for a place to put in development projects won't choose locations in Arkansas because we don't have these same tools that other states have. On the opponent side of that, there's not any organized opposition within our state, but some of the complaints that have emerged in other states that actually have these tools, particularly related to the star bonds, they're not always that successful. They don't necessarily cause any new development in that area. A lot of times the revenue that they thought would be generated to support the the development project itself doesn't surface. And so in some instances, the cities have actually used revenues that they have from other sources to help kind of pay for that refinance, the bonds that are issued. So, you know, it's kind of a give and take depending on what side you look at it, but certainly that's something that we'd like voters to kind of think about and decide for themselves.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. That is some very complex financial information that voters might not appreciate on a day-to-day basis, but does make a difference at the county and city level. So, Tom, you mentioned earlier that there are additional issues that have been referred by the voters. Can you tell me what those are?
Yes, there were three different. Actually, at one time there were 4 different ballot issues that were out there circulating petitions.
And 3 of those made
three
it
of those actually got at some level submitted petitions. 4 actually submitted petitions to the Secretary of State's office. One of those did not have enough petitions initially and decided not to pursue additional petitions, and that was the severance tax on natural gas. The other 3, 2 of them were casino gambling issues from 2 different proponents. Both of those submitted signatures to the Secretary of State's office. One didn't receive enough signatures from enough counties and was disqualified for that reason. The other one, the Nancy Todd Poker Palace gambling casino question, received enough signatures originally, and then there was some question about ballot title, and they changed ballot title, and then the ballot title was disqualified.
Those are both
in court. So because they're in court, both have been certified for the ballot and may in fact appear. Whether they are actually counted or not is still in question, but both will in all probability appear on the ballot because of the timing issue, especially on paper ballots, because the paper ballots are being printed. The other one is a medical marijuana issue that was submitted. And enough signatures were submitted to qualify for the ballot. It was certified for the ballot, and now that it's been challenged at the Supreme Court level in Arkansas, and is in limbo because of that. So the oral arguments are being heard kind of as we speak, and so there is on those 3 petitions. All of them are, one of them is an initiated act. The marijuana issue is an initiated act, and then the poker palace issues, the casino gambling issues, those are constitutional. So those would make constitutional change in the state, and they are very restrictive. So if either passes, they would essentially have a lock on casino gambling in the state of Arkansas.
What if both pass?
It's a good question. We've asked that question of some legal folks, and we don't have a definitive answer. I suspect if both passed, we would be in court.
Be in court, and I've also heard that maybe the one with the most votes would supersede the other.
That is a possibility. I think that this is uncharted territory for the state of Arkansas. So there's also the question of they are specifically restrictive. They are essentially they would have sole ownership of the right to have casino gambling in the state of Arkansas.
So nobody else
can do that. It's a monopoly circumstance. So there is a real question as to what that would do to the existing gambling establishments in the state of Arkansas, what the impact on those would be. And so I think those are questions that remain out there as well.
Speaking of uncharted territory, medical marijuana, that's an issue that has been proposed in the past and signatures collected on, but this is the first time it's actually been certified for the ballot. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So what is the proposal? What would happen if this law passed?
The proposal is essentially a parallel to the same legal status for marijuana use for medical purposes in 17 other states. Essentially, what it does is decriminalizes medical use of marijuana in the state of Arkansas under state law. It does not change the federal law. So
it would be illegal under federal law.
It's still illegal under federal law. It sets up a mechanism for dispensaries for determining a medical reason for the use of marijuana. It sets up a mechanism for growing marijuana personally if you're outside a certain distance from a dispensary. It sets up the mechanism for oversight. Sets up the mechanism for identifying those people who have a condition that warrants medical marijuana as a treatment. And sets up an ID process and a way to defend your legal right to use marijuana. But it also sets limits. It sets the amount of marijuana that any individual can have, 2.5 ounces in any 15-day period of time. So a pretty limited amount. Again, it is state law only. It is.
So you could be arrested.
You could be arrested. You could be arrested by
state officials.
By state officials if you were outside any of the rules given for the specific use of marijuana, having more than a prescribed amount, not being a card carrier, not having the condition that warrants the use of the material.
But if you're following the law.
If you're following the law, state authorities would be prohibited from arrest or citing you for any criminal action.
But at the federal level?
At the federal level, you still are at risk.
So what are the supporters of this saying? Why do they think this should be passed in Arkansas?
Well, supporters believe that marijuana has a medical value and that people who would be benefited from its medicinal values should have access to it. And so I guess their strongest argument is that that there are identified in at least some research medical values of marijuana, and that the chemical alternatives that are available today don't provide the same relief as the marijuana plant itself provides.
Because there are some medications that contain similar ingredients.
There are.
But what you're saying is that supporters say those don't
the
necessarily.
synthetics just don't do the same thing that the natural ingredients do.
What about the opponents?
The opponents are really of the opinion that this is that this is an introductory drug. It essentially opens the door to other more dangerous drugs to be used. That it is a Class 1 drug, and so under federal law, it's seen as a Class 1 drug, and so it is. It is also it offers opportunity for people to misuse it. Offers opportunity for people to drive and operate equipment under the influence, and that poses a significant risk. And it also makes it more pervasive in the in society, and by it being more pervasive, then it kind of opens the door to drug use in a more debilitating way.
Okay, well, thank you so much for spending time with me today and going over these proposed ballot issues. I want to personally thank Tom, Director of the Public Policy Center, and Stacy with the Community and Economic Development Unit. And if you have any other questions about these proposed ballot issues, fact sheets and more information will be posted on the Public Policy Center website at ppc.uaex.edu, and the Public Policy Center also has a Facebook page, facebook.com/UAPPC, where more information is posted. And just want to remind you that Election Day is November 6th, and that in a democracy, voting is a privilege of citizenship, so please exercise that right to vote. Thank you very much.